Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 52, recording on Thursday evening, January 23rd. Have a great guest for you today. His name's Eric Nordquist. We've had him on before. He's the producer of Paul Allen's show, 9 to noon on KFAN. Loves the Vikings, cares about it, thinks about it a lot. So always fun to chat with him. And we got into just what would be the perfect offseason kind of in his mind, or what would make him happy. So think you guys will enjoy that. As always, the show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the local area, run by a bunch of people who love the Vikings. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They do a phenomenal job over there, have branches all throughout the area. Please go check them out. All the information you need to figure out how to get an account and where you can make that happen is down below in the description. So please check that out. If you're new here watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. That helps us out a ton. If you're on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, anywhere else, you can rate, review, and that stuff. Just the same. We will not be upset if you go that route. If you don't know me, I cover the Vikings every day for The Athletic. It's the offseason, so I'm thinking about working on some bigger type stuff, preparing for the offseason ahead and into the summer and spring. So it's always a good time to think deeply. I said earlier this week, still going to do the podcast, have a lot to talk about. Obviously, this offseason, there will be a lot of decisions and stuff to react to. I also think it's going to be a great time to bring some guests of people that I study from, learn from throughout each offseason cycle, and hopefully you guys can be along that journey with me. So looking forward to this. Not going to waste a ton more of your time. Here is Eric Nordquist talking about this upcoming Vikings offseason. Nordo, welcome back to the show. Last time we did this, there was an audio kickback, and it was all my fault. And I am a first-time podcast host producer. You produce full-time. So my apologies for the issue. I mean, I just wanted to get that out of the gate, get that, just let you know how apologetic I am, frankly.
Well, I appreciate it, and we talked extensively off-air about it, and one of my demands was that you open the podcast with the apology, and you fulfilled your end of the obligation, so I'm very thankful for that. In this new streaming world that started about 4 years ago, where various platforms popped up, and instead of being together, we were apart in our basements, which I'm in my basement right now, as a matter of fact. We have to be comfortable with the downgrading and audio quality, and in some cases, video quality as well. But thanks for letting me join the show again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk Vikings. I come on the show 9 to noon, KFAN, come on every week. And a lot of times we don't get to talk. And I know you've got thoughts, and we will talk during breaks or after the show. So I enjoy having you on here where we can kind of kick it. That's the approach.
Yeah, and it's, this is the first NFL team, I believe, that you've covered, the Minnesota Vikings. And whether, the Friday feasts, those are always boisterous, and it's absolutely packed at Buffalo Wild Wings locations. And then now that the season is over, it ended, well, in gut-punching, unceremonious fashion, as it does. And you'll get to know this the longer that you cover the Vikings. You'll get to know that this is a trend. This is something we're familiar with, certainly. But you're right. This team it hasn't won it yet, but it's never short on talkers and storylines, and it's always keeping us thinking. And being a part of 9 to noon and the extended fan family as you are, our goal, it, is always to find roots on how this team can win. Right? How this team can win every single game, even if there's a bit of rubidity, a bit of delusion associated with those routes. That's how we handle it, and so we're gonna get our hearts broken, but we're gonna love again, and we're gonna turn the page as the team does, and get ready for the combine with a newly extended head coach, general manager, who knows, expecting that to happen at some point. But we just we recharge, we restart this thing. We're used to it. We're good at it.
The funny thing is, throughout this season, I'm like, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be the guy. You know me. I don't like the woe is me, even though I fully understand, as the folks listening are probably screaming, when you have been beaten down by the course of this franchise and this sports town as much as people have. Like, I totally get it. I think I want it so bad for people like you, for people like the folks listening to have that joy. I'm going to segue here. You mentioned the Friday football feast, and I was telling somebody this the other day, but I used to go, and every Friday I'll travel around to a random Buffalo Wild Wings for this and I'll sit with PA and Charge and Chanhassen and wherever the heck, Roseville, wherever we are across the area. And there was one time, maybe early 2023, where it's intermission. Okay, intermission. I don't know why I just said that, but the break of the show. This guy comes up to me. I believe his name's Warren. I believe he lives in St. Paul. You know this guy. And I remember this guy, I'm trying to be nice to the fans in the crowd who are talking to me. And this guy is telling me about a guy, Kyle Hinton, who at the time was an offensive lineman on the practice squad. He's telling me Kyle Hinton, it runs a 4.5. He's going to be the next offensive line star. His commitment to Kyle Hinton was phenomenal. But the segue is this. Like 2 weeks ago or last week, I'm losing track of time, I was going through the last 10 years of interior offensive line draftees in late rounds for this organization.
Not fun.
And it was a rabbit hole of David Yankee, Austin Shepard, Tyrus Thompson, Willie Beavers, which is an actual name as I was cracking up looking at it, Danny Isadora, Colby Gossett, Oli Udo, Drew Samia, Kyle Hinton. I mean, the first question I have for you for this show, are you okay after hearing those names? And B, like, what has it been like for 10 years to observe the fact that the interior of the offensive line has been treated the way it has been by this organization literally for a decade?
Yeah, it's tough. And a name that you didn't mention, because ultimately all those names, David Yankee, I mean, that oh my goodness, that's I think there was a Chris DeGear, there was an Austin Shepard in the mix, TJ Clemmings, we didn't get out of him the former Pitt Panther that we get out of our current right tackle in Brian O'Neill. The list is long, and Colby Gossett, by the way, you mentioned that avid 9 to noon listener who approached you at Buffalo Wild Wings. Before it was Kyle Hinton, it was Colby Gossett. And it was a massive mistake that he was not given a starting opportunity. And as much as I liked the guy and he was put in a spot where he had to produce, and at times there were good things, at other times there were awful things, in a couple of years, if we're going to do this show again, we might be talking about Blake Brandel in that same regard. But Oli Udo, out of Elon, how do we get something out of him? It's always been that. Not always, but certainly for the last decade, as you mentioned. Drew Samia out of Oklahoma, I think he was like a 5th-round pick, maybe something like that. But at that time, there was optimism. And then when he finally got an opportunity, frankly, it was just putrid. And that's Danny Isadora out of Miami, the Cane, where my guy PA just wanted the Cane. He just wanted to yell that as often as possible. So, again, there's a spirit of emotional immaturity and a base of sports fandom that you want these guys to turn out. It's been awful. But one of the names you didn't mention is the last time Christian Darrisaw, 1st-round pick, and save for this injury, I think he's been a home run, right? Team loves him, re-upped him, and he's one of the best left tackles in the league. 2012, the team goes after Matt Khalil, and that did not work out, and ultimately was an unceremonious end to his tenure in Minnesota. This team really going back, 10 years is probably the right spot, if not longer, if we're talking about Khalil 2012, is post Bryant McKinney at the left tackle spot, and John Sullivan provided some good years at center for us, some back injuries on the back end of his career. Of course, Steve Hutchinson ultimately ends up in the Hall of Fame. It's been just an absolute abyss and a complete dearth of talent, specifically on the interior. And then fast forward, I guess, if we're looking for strikeouts on the higher end, Garrett Bradbury, very polarized opinions in terms of Garrett's time here. And right now, I think, Garrett has provided now more recently, he's kind of on a valuable deal, right? And I think has as you start drilling down names for free agency and things, I think if you're looking in the interior, there's a very good chance Garrett will finish out his contract here because of the value that he provides from a dollar standpoint. But in the end, he was putting up all those reps at the combine. We heard about this guy just being a he-man at NC State, and you draft him. And I still remember 2019, the draft party at US Bank Stadium. You couldn't believe 5,000 people could be as loud as they were. They were so excited about the changing of not the guard, but in this case, the changing of the center and what this was going to mean in transforming the offensive line, and it didn't work out. And, as we marvel at the Chris Joneses of the world and how every team has this amazing interior defensive lineman, we were dealing with a younger, cat, but Kobe Turner, what he did to the Vikings offensive line. Now in this, it was more actually specifically Dalton Reisner at the guard spot. Kobe Turner 1v1 was just murdering him all night in the wild card game. It was not. But let's go. Okay, playoff game 2 years ago. Dexter Lawrence, what he was doing. Even in that 4th and 8 play, everyone jokes about the check down to T.J. Hawkinson with Kirk. But he didn't have time. He didn't have time to necessarily set his feet and survey and get all 3-4 reads in. Probably should have thrown up a 50-50 to Justin Jefferson, but who was in the backfield? It was Dexter Lawrence. And Kenny Clark with the Packers, getting back to Garrett Bradbury. Yeah, good times, bad times, mostly bad times. And so we've had this polarizing view at times. I've seen Garrett Bradbury make all-pro quality plays, and he's been sturdy, and for the most part, when healthy, he's been consistent. But you go through that list, this team has absolutely whiffed at frankly, almost an inexplicably high rate over the last decade, and it's certainly inhibited, I think, bringing it to the current in 2024 in this Kevin O'Connell regime. I think it's inhibited our ability to really run the offense at the highest possible level that KO wants it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I began there, and it's interesting because you say like it's almost inexplicable that all of these guys who were drafted in the late round, you wouldn't hit on a couple of them. It's like, I think if I ran through the Packers offensive line of the last 3 years, I want to say probably half those starters are like 5th round, 4th round, just developmental guys. Yeah. And so you would think over the course of time, there would be a couple of them. But I would also say this, like if you look at the Lions roster and their offensive line right now, a lot of those guys are first-round picks. And so typically, just like with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, who was a second-round pick, if you're selecting in those top 2 rounds, it is much more of a guarantee. That's just the reality. The reason I brought it up is because
depressing.
I wanted to ask you, like, from your perspective, as we think about this offseason, and I know it's very early, and so, I'm probably getting way ahead of myself, but – like, are you going to come out of this offseason happy? Like, if they revamp the interior, is that the question is that the thing they have to do to get you to a place at which you come out of this offseason happy, or is it more than that, or is it something entirely different for you?
Well, I'm still thankful. I'm thinking about like the Washington Commanders. Like Brandon Coleman, their left tackle's a 3rd-round pick. They just lost Sam Cosmi, who was a tackle. I think he was mid-late round, but they kicked him into guard, and he just got hurt. But sorry, I'm so obsessed with now offensive linemen and trying to pick out. You are dead on correct though. Is the majority of times
Cosmi's a 2nd-round pick.
He was a 2nd-round pick. Okay, my bad on Cosmi. Good work to the Commanders on that. But the idea in general then, whether it's Cosmi, in our case it's Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, top 2 round picks. Frank Ragnow with the Kitties, Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. You think about these guys, and they have made their money. Prior to that, I think it was Graham Glasgow, who was at least a top 3-round pick. So you think about what they've been able to do with that, and the lack of commitment on our side has been problematic, and we've paid the price for it. So in some ways, maybe inexplicable is hyperbole in the regard that we should actually mostly expect these guys to fail, and that it is, an unbelievable mix of coaching, hidden talent. It's kind of, like what we hope for Dallas Turner. Year one, he was just young. He's gonna grow into his body a little bit more. And the 22-year-old in his second year is going to be this revelation. Well, we've been doing a lot of hoping with offensive linemen for a long time. The A topic with this team, well, first of all, the entire secondary is a free agent effectively, except for Josh Metellus. So they have multiple A topics, but if they come out of this after a season in which, including the wild card game, I think Darnold was sacked 56 times. I mean, just,
sounds right, but that's absolutely ridiculous.
It's a fat number in the wild card game with 9, so that, but that doesn't have to be an outlier. As you look at a team with throughout the 9-game winning streak, it was, well, Sam hit the turf 4 times this week, but we won. Sam got sacked 5 times this game, but we won. And you kind of you explain those things away until you get hit 9 times, and you can't. The guard situation needs to change. I don't know Dalton Reisner as a person. I know that he's always eager and he's always bubbly, always positive on the mic. I need him to not be our starting right guard next year. I need to have an option, something to compete with Blake Brandel on the left side. I mentioned it. It's a combination of how many people this team needs to replace / re-sign, and the lack of draft capital, which is going to create issues with this team as they try to replenish things. But if they were able to find a couple of guards out of free agency / maybe Thursday night, a draft night, I think this team gets much better because, it feels like right now you're favored to begin the J.J. McCarthy era, and he's a guy that thrived in college. I'm not limiting him in the way that some would, where, well, they just ran the ball, right? It was the Blake Corum show, and in some ways, specifically at Michigan, it was. I think he can sling it around. I'm not worried about that, but this is a guy that needs to be protected. This is a guy that's going to need a run game. The interior of the offensive line speaks to both of that.
I mean, coming off injury too. Like we got a young quarterback. Again, we'll see when he if he starts from the outset. But if you have a young quarterback, I mean, you probably don't need to be having him take a ton of hits from the interior of the pocket as he's getting his feet under him coming off the injury that it was. So I think, I mean, for me, I just asked that question because you're right. You're right to bring up the secondary. I mean, and I've said this on the podcast, Stephon Gilmore, Byron Murphy Jr., Shaq Griffin, Cam Bynum, and then potentially Harrison Smith, depending. I mean, his contract voids. He could do what he's done the last couple of years and extend that. I mean, there are a lot of places that this roster needs supplementing. I mean, we haven't talked about running back. Aaron Jones, the decision with him. I think it would totally make sense for them to bring him back and then draft somebody so that you have an older guy with a presence. Not older, but for running back, older for sure. Alongside a young and explosive running back. To me, that makes sense. But you have that position, and the interior of the defensive line, which you mentioned earlier, and I was glad you did because I was going through the 4 teams remaining in the playoffs right now and thinking about like, okay, what are the commonalities among all 4 teams? I mean, it's really difficult because you're dealing with quarterbacks in Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen that are, I mean, if you're the Vikings, to compare anything to what those guys have accomplished, it's difficult. But if you look at all 4 teams, the Bills have Ed Oliver, who's been very good this year. The Chiefs have Chris Jones. I don't need to explain to anyone listening to this podcast what he's been capable of. The Eagles have Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. Milton Williams has been one of the best interior defenders in the NFL this year. He's going to be a free agent. I'd put a pin in that. And then the Commanders with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. So as much as we've talked about the interior of the offensive line, to me, I mean, that is a position group that you've also talked on the radio for years in terms of wanting someone on the interior who can create a push. And this draft does have a lot of those types of options, but I think we're probably wrong if we are not focusing any of our energy on that spot, because I still think, I mean, you have to blitz on the interior if you can't create any pressure. And like, as we've seen, it's hard for a quarterback, or it's easier for a quarterback if there is no interior pressure.
Yeah. In some ways, so getting back to, what I would be happy with, the interior of the offensive line. Bring back Stephon Gilmore, bring back Shaq Griffin, but tell me that you shored up the interior of that offensive line and you found a badass 3 technique of some sort. And you found a badass pass rushing interior lineman of some sort. And I like, specifically against the run, Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard, who I believe is one of the 26 free agents or however many it is. So they got to make a decision on him as well. Again, there's a ton of bodies that are in need of new contracts, a lot of decisions to make, but it all starts there. And I would actually, entering in now, getting philosophical in terms of, how the head coach might see this through. I think if the head coach joined this podcast and he was part of this conversation and he was as forthright and honest as just another guy at the table, I think he would say, I want a couple of badass guards. I want to be able to effectively run for 2 freaking yards instead of having to create some sort of chemistry experiment to figure out how to get a guy open. And I want to move people forward, and I want to play mean. I want to control the ball. Yeah, I want to get loose to Justin Jefferson. Hell yeah, I want to find Jordan Addison in open space. And certainly, TJ in the seams, I got these weapons. Yeah, I want to throw it all the time. Absolutely. But I also want to be able to have a touchdown lead in the fourth quarter and just run somebody to death. I truly believe that. And I believe if I have everything I need, I can put 35 on people every single week. And so if I just get somebody that can rush the passer on the defensive side, yeah, I can have Fabian Moreau out there once in a while because we can compensate for that. We can be built to win shootouts. And so I think that's where the head coach's mind is at, and it's tough to get into his head. He's done such a great job over these 3 seasons, but I do feel at times where, and he would never openly say this, obviously, but there's almost like this. He throws his. I don't want to say he doesn't make excuses per se, but there are elements of it where I think he truly feels that he doesn't have what he needs in certain spots to run his offense. So then that comes down to 2 things. Well, how much can you adjust the offense to best accommodate what you do have, or what can you do to go get those bodies so that you can do what you truly want to do? I think he did a lot of accommodating over the course of 2024 with Sam. Elite coaching job getting him to the best season of his career. But in the end, we saw the combination of not enough bodies to make this thing work and not enough accommodation in certain spots to try and find another way. And that culminated in a Detroit game that was nothing short of abysmal from the quarterback's perspective, and then a wild card game, which was effectively, a failure in almost every single respect, from the offensive line, from the QB, the inability or maybe the unwillingness, the stubbornness about establishing the run. That's been a common theme over the course of these 3 seasons. So I feel like the coach, if you said, I'm going to get you 2 badass guards, 2 mean guys, and I'm going to get you a younger running back that I don't have to have kick gloves on about touches and such over the course of a season. I'm not worried about soft tissue injuries every 2 weeks, and I can air it out all day. My quarterback's going to take 25 sacks over the course of the season instead of 55, and we can put 35 on people and we can run it a little bit. I think the head coach would take that all day.
Yeah, it was interesting, like in the aftermath of that wild card game, to hear people talk about some of the sacks and Sam Darnold holding the ball, and one of the refrains was there aren't enough quick routes. And while or quick passing game. While I understood that, there were 3 things that I thought about. One, Sam Darnold likes to hold the ball. I mean, he had the 3rd highest time to throw among all quarterbacks in the NFL. The other 2 were Lamar Jackson, whose time to throw is what it is because he bounces around. It's not because he's not choosing to throw. It's because he's creating like crazy the way he always does. And the other one was Jalen Hurts, who I think does some of that as well, create creative, but I also think Jalen I mean, I don't want to say similar to Sam, but in that he likes holding the ball to be able to see it downfield. So
Yeah.
to generate a quick passing game, you're asking a quarterback who probably doesn't operate in that mode as effectively to do that. I also think the two other things with the quick passing game and wanting more of it that stood out to me are the way that Justin Jefferson was defended. Like, quick passing is often very effective against soft zone. They weren't getting a lot of soft zone because the corners at the end of the season were pressed up on Justin. There was a lot of double coverage. That's another aspect. And then even in the wild card game, there were some quick passes. There was a swing pattern to the outside where Jalen Naylor missed a block. There was a screen play to Aaron Jones who dropped the ball. And there were some possibility. There was a fake screen wheel that the Rams just covered really well. So,
and how about that 4th and 2 where I think Justin Jefferson actually fell down on it?
There was,
on the 4th and 2.
No question.
That would have been an easy chain mover right there. And then he ultimately takes that. I mean, again, he took. He was holding on to the ball.
There were
you didn't have to take a 13-yard loss on it just because JJ fell down, but all the same, the options have been there. I think Sam missed, 4 or 5 touchdowns in the Lions game alone in the red zone. So yeah, I'm never going to get into the. It's difficult for me to nitpick certain aspects of it. Specifically, and I know that ultimately Kevin O'Connell chose this. Like he chose, I don't necessarily believe it, that it was always the plan, that, I mean, JJ McCarthy's injury changed some of this and I don't believe heart of hearts they can say whatever they want. I don't think they anticipated a 14-win season this year and all of that, but they chose to bring in Sam Darnold, and the head coach has chosen each of these paths that he's gone down, but I also, again, I go back to the idea that I don't believe the head coach feels that he's necessarily going to work with his guys quite yet, if that makes sense, where it's not the ideal circumstance. I don't believe that he's felt that, he has everything he needs to truly lift this thing off. So there's a chance for the head coach to grow on the play calling side.
Yeah.
There's a chance for us to finally address the interior of the line at a really high level with some of this cash we have, and mix those two together. And I'm still very optimistic about the road forward. But it is difficult for me to go back and truly without, just without going play by play to say we need more beaters here, we need more aspects here.
Right.
I'm always going to complain about the run. We can't be an 80% passing team on 3rd and short. I hate that. We've had some touchdowns that way, and we've had a lot of punts that way. So, I do some of that, but in the end, I haven't seen enough bad to say that this is an L on O'Connell, excuse me, not McConnell, O'Connell that needs to change in earnest.
I will say, you started to, at least in the last 2 weeks, as I talked to some coaches, I think opposing teams too, it was like, they're not going to run the ball here. And so you saw some coverages from opposing teams.
They don't respect it. It just,
Right. You would like, and this is from conversation with people inside the building. Like they were seeing coverages on 2nd and long that you typically see on 3rd and long because of both the lack of commitment to it, but also the lack of success. So I do think, for me, the run game, I think it's very worth talking about, and I do believe, similar to you get a couple of really gnarly guards who can create a vertical push. That will be a huge factor in being better there. I also do think paired with that has to be a commitment to it from the staff, a commitment to the design, to practicing it, to valuing it. I mean, I don't know what kind of priorities, but they talk so much this year about play style. Use the word play style. It was really just coach speak for we've got to be physical up front. But it has to be more than just a buzzword, a buzz phrase, a physicality. It's got to be repped. And if that means you're not repping the depth, the route depth that Justin Jefferson deploys and you're taking away some of the reps you're taking in the passing game, I think you got to do it, because I think ultimately to get this thing at the place that they want it, that you want it, the people listening to this want it to go, it's going to take that commitment level. So to me, the part of the reason I began with the offensive line is I think it's going to be so interesting. You've got like $57 million in cap space. There's ways to create more. You cut Ed Ingram, you could probably create $3.5 million more. I mean, with Garrett Bradbury, it's another route to doing so. And then you're going to have to replace, like we've talked about, secondary. The interior defensive line is an option. Like they extended Harrison Phillips before the season. His cap number is going to be around $9.5 million. It's kind of a lot, but that's what they did. So it is what it is at this point. And so there's a lot. There are so many holes that they're going to have to fill. For me, it's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how they allocate those resources and how they do it in free agency in terms of, do they want to take swings on the players that don't come with a ton of risk, like a Trey Smith? This guy for the Chiefs at right guard has been a durable player. He's young and he's been productive. There's not a ton of risk in him, but he's very expensive. A player like Will Fries, who fractured his tibia, Colts guard, there's more risk there, but if you pay him X amount of dollars, you have more money to spend elsewhere. So how they end up managing all of that is going to be very interesting to watch, with a front office that operated with it well last year, obviously.
Yeah, looking at going back to the Commanders again, it kind of became in vogue where in 23, I think they took Andrew Wiley, who was a tackle with the Chiefs. They got him in free agency. And then it was Allegretti, I believe. Mm-hmm. Nick Allegretti, maybe.
That's right.
They got him after last year, and that's two of their starting five on the O-line. But the thing is there, though, that you mentioned, is they got both of them on incredibly nice contracts. One was like 3 for $24. We're talking like $8-9 million, right? This Trey Smith thing, this is why ultimately I'm wondering if it could even potentially happen, is this is not an $8 million thing. This guy could be, 14, 15,
$21 million a year.
Okay, well that's even worse than I thought, and I just don't see how that's possible. So in fairness, as part of this conversation, I haven't done a lot of research yet in terms of what the free agent offensive lineman list looks like. So I know that we have that cash, as you mentioned. And what also, earlier today, I'm just on X, and somebody posted a video of Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back. Well, I kind of want him.
I saw that same video. Like, the guy's electric.
So I think I want him. So, okay, well, where's he going to go? Is he a first-round back? I mean, he's going to be there maybe. Is he going to be there at 24 or whatever? Okay, well, there's probably going to be a badass guard at 20. So now what? So we don't have the draft capital. The free – this is almost a longer form conversation on the general manager too, and it's not breaking news or I'm not this is not earth shaking. Is that this team cannot continue to piece itself together via free agency every year, every single person. And I know as measured as this spending spree was, and Van Ginkel ends up being, what a godsend on that contract, right? With his production this year, it's crazy. And Blake Cashman, for the most part, I would say, provided value on that money with what he did on the inside at linebacker. But, even with what Jonathan Grenard did, he's on the lower end of ultimately what the Vikings are going to be paying to add in some of those premium spots. And the more premium that you put on a guard, a Trey Smith at $20 million a year, you just can't do that. And so, over the course of time, we're going to have to start being good in the draft again. We're going to have to actually start accumulating first 2 days of draft picks again. And so, and that gets back into, the previous regime loved their 7th round picks, loved taking flyers on the Drew Samiyas of the world, the Austin Shepherds. You have this list. It's too long. It's too long to mention.
I really don't want to look again, to be honest.
There's not enough time in the show to list
Willie
all
Beavers.
Of the names. Yeah, it was. I think like the college pro football, whatever college's PFF version was, had him as like the second worst rated offensive lineman. It's completely slipping my name, but their last draft, Spielman, he had 4 third-round picks, and it was the Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. Wyatt.
I'm gonna tell you right now. Hold on.
Oh my goodness, it was Big Ten Offensive Lineman 2021. Wyatt Davis, and he was the Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year for the Buckeyes. It didn't work out, and he was just the newest and greatest flyer of sorts that we took on offensive linemen that didn't work out. We have to start winning in the draft again. So, whatever those conversations that are taking place, Kevin O'Connell's been extended, Kwesi in those conversations now, getting a contract extension of his own. I wouldn't anticipate that wouldn't happen. I think he'll get a contract extension, but at some point we got to shift back to that draft. I would anticipate that we do see 1 or 2 offensive linemen for sure. I would anticipate via free agency, one way or another, we're going to get to 2 names. I just don't think it's going to be Trey Smith. I think it's more, you were mentioning Fries in Indianapolis. I think you're going to see one of those things come through, again, in a measured manner because we have to be. And I'm going back to the Rube aspects of 9 to noon. I'm going to be excited for Mr. Fries. Oh, you wouldn't believe how quickly tibias are. You wouldn't believe how quickly they're healing these days. No, don't worry about it.
We're going to bring in an expert tibia doctor to give us information on Will Fries. Yeah,
correct.
He's Will Fries.
I saw him at TCL the other day. He's bouncing around. Oh, he got rid of the little cart. Yeah, he's perfect. He's going to be great. He's going to be ready for camp. Don't worry about it, Rubes. No, but those are going to be probably some of the names that we get. And I would actually go so far to say is I don't believe that this is a 2025 fix. I believe this is still going to be, the competitive rebuild that we were talking about. Just by nature of how this roster is constructed, I still believe that is a multi-year project. And so, there's going to be some patience there and some hope selling that, again, we're prepared to do. We are familiar with this spot. But the cool thing is, though, is that, with the way I see it as an outsider, I think the head coach, again, if he was here and if he was completely open and completely honest about it, he would see things similar to how we're talking about it now. So how does he get that done? And I do believe that if his vision is in lockstep with ours, and I will be honest that I will say, I don't think that was the case necessarily at all times in the previous regime. And it's not about, coaches, it's not about them doing what fans want them to do. That's not what I mean. But I think that they have a very clear – I think the needs of this team are so clear and so identifiable. I have to trust that Kevin O'Connell working with Kwesi are going to do the things that they need to get done. Love or hate Kwesi's draft situation. For the most part, it's been subpar, no doubt about it. Kwesi's an executor, man. Kwesi he gets deals done, and I think he's proven himself, at least in terms of if he's given a plan of what Kevin O'Connell needs to win these games – I do actually believe that Kwesi, from a nuts and bolts, dollars and cents standpoint, will go out and find a way to get those things done. The measured spending spree in free agency was impressive. His ability to, in short order, acquire Cam Robinson from the Jaguars, I think he can do those. He's an executor. He is a doer. And so if we have the identification standpoint from KO, I think Kwesi can accomplish some of these things.
Yeah, and I mean, your point about the draft is on. If they don't start to, compile the premium draft picks, which he himself and Kwesi has said are first and second round picks, the hard part for me to square of kind of what's happened the last couple of years or the last few years is, the first year made sense. They amassed multiple first and second round picks. A lot. Now the
what
darts,
did they do with them?
The darts were not thrown accurately at the board. But then last year, do
you have when you play darts? Do you have like a beer? Do you have a beer range? Like if you're playing cricket?
I'm terrible at darts, whether I'm sober or whether I'm having the time I want to be having when I'm playing darts.
So I have like this 3 to 6 window where I can just mash triple 20s and 18s all day.
It's not surprising. It doesn't surprise me.
You have no chance. But as soon as I take a sip of the next one, the window is closed, and it's a disaster. And I can't win to save my life if I stood 2 feet away. If I just walked up and just plucked it right on the I'd miss. So there's that window. I wonder if there's a draft, if there's whatever the equivalent of a beer window is of bar games, maybe there's a draft window. That first
we
draft,
haven't seen it yet in the last 3 years.
It was apocalyptic.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is, again, what was surprising to me is with and I know there was a lot of moving and shaking to generate the extra first-round pick last year, the number 23, and then that was lumped in. There was a lot going on and a lot of thought behind that. Having spoke to people inside the building, like I know there was a lot of strategy behind what they were doing, but then to give up as many picks as they did for Dallas Turner, I mean, and to leave them where they are now with 4 picks for this upcoming draft, it makes it very difficult. This is part of the benefit of the rookie quarterback contract. It does allow you to make up for misses. The problem is the rookie quarterback contract is supposed to allow you to build upon even further. And so, I mean, there's no question they have to improve in that regard. And I've said this. Probably
now you got me. Now I'm down on the GM again. I was I was getting excited about it, and now I'm down on the GM again.
And it's not to be, and I'm not trying. It's just the reality. Like, I mean, I believe I counted it up last week, and it was 23 picks. The most elite player among those picks is Jalen Naylor. 8 of them are already gone.
Jordan Addison.
Jordan Addison. I don't know why I said. Whoa. Yeah, it's not. What, yeah, no. Jordan Addison is the most elite of them. The other mildly impactful players that were selected, Jalen Naylor, that's why I said that. I was already thinking ahead. And then Will Reichard kicked this past year. But there's just not a whole lot to point at. So there's nothing to say in my role and your role other than to be realistic about it. Now, I've also written this. Like, Kwesi's background in Cleveland was not to evaluate draft picks. His role in Cleveland was to prioritize, identify Cleveland's needs, mostly via free agency. So he was never his most experience within the draft was developing draft charts in terms of the allocation of trade picks and the value of those picks.
The value of those picks, yeah.
Right. So there would, to expect a runway is necessary. Wow. But I'll say this too, like I know the coaching staff had more involvement in the draft picks last year, without question. A lot of the coaching staff was present at the Senior Bowl. A lot of Brian Flores' perspective has played a role in some of those undrafted signings post-draft. So the hope would be that just furthers and that continues. But to bring it around, I mean, part of the conversation that I wanted to have and that I think we hit on well is what makes you happy if going through the next few months, what makes you happy to hear you say multiple interior offensive linemen, a pass rushing stud in the interior, and then fortifying in some ways the secondary. I think that's got to be fair. I also think to be able to do that, it has to be J.J. McCarthy, because to pay Sam Darnold what he would be deserving, it just would limit you to do those other things. So, and I agree with you. I think if Kevin O'Connell were sitting on this podcast, which hopefully he will be soon enough, I mean, he is clear-eyed about it. There's some stuff he can't say publicly because he has a locker room to support and to uplift and all of that stuff. But, I mean, there's no question that these needs are – I mean, it's hit a point with the interior of the offensive line where even I, as an objective journalist, you almost are like at some point it's got to be changed, or else like what are we doing? It'd be like covering a business and you see them make bad decisions over and over. You're like, God, like people, like come on. So no, to hear you describe the formula that would make you happy, I think that's what I was after, and I feel like I have a hold on that, which is good.
Well, again, now you just got me down on the GM. We gave up so many picks for Dallas Turner, and he only played 300 and some snaps. And then the Lewis Cine thing is just this independent debacle all on its own. And then there's an injury. Mekhi Blackmon, there was a ton of potential. He tears his ACL. The tragedy with, on a serious note, Kyrie Jackson passing away. And so, the things that you can't help, that you can't impact, with your decisions that takes those things out of your hands. It's been an unbelievable run there. I do think just X's and O's, the simplicity of it is because we're used to this, watching teams in the playoffs making deep runs while we sit at home. It is truly my eternal envy of an offensive line like what the Philadelphia Eagles have. As much as I can't stand the fan base and I certainly would never root for the team, what they got, on both ends, and really actually at the left tackle spot, that's changed a couple of times over the last handful of years, but Lane Johnson's been there. They replace a Hall of Fame center with Cam Jurgens, who's been fantastic. Their guards, they turned, I'm actually, how about moving Cam Robinson into guard? Would he be interested in doing that if he was to come back? Because I'm watching Mekhi Becton, who was basically a split hair away from not being in the NFL after that awful run with the Jets. Now he's inside, and on that long, the first touchdown by Saquon, Mekhi Becton took a linebacker and threw him into next week. He's just a complete earth mover. And we, I don't know what the philosophy is between, you want a combination of size and speed, certainly. We just haven't had enough good bodies in there that have that combination. And I envy that. And then on the other side of it, I'm seeing, Harrison Phillips. I like Harrison Phillips. I love the 4 passes defense. If you're not going to get there, get your hands up. He did that. couple of sacks earlier in the season. That's cool. But in the end, in terms of impacting, more, the run stopping aspect of it, I respect in combo in concert with Jonathan Bullard. He does not impact games as a pass rusher on the inside. He does not affect quarterbacks even remotely enough to consider that truly a centerpiece of a high-end defensive front. And so, I use this name often, and just to mix it up, our morning show on the Fan would call him Sebastian Thunderbucket, but his name was Tom Johnson. Just this veteran retread. I think he was with maybe the Saints prior or after, I forget. But he was just this middle-of-the-road, middling veteran. In 2017, had 5 or 6 sacks from the interior at 3 technique. I think he was the first guy since Kevin Williams years prior to get 5+ sacks, and I'm pretty damn sure he's the last one that did it up to 2024, now 2025. So that's how bad it's been in the middle since a potential Hall of Famer in Kevin Williams left this team. It's unacceptable. And every team in the playoffs has their Tom Johnson, has their Sebastian Thunderbucket. We do not have him. And
the last first-round pick spent on an interior defensive lineman was Sharif Floyd. In 2013.
That's correct.
I was 16 years old. It seems impossible. Frankly.
The sad story about him, really awesome dude. And had potential to be the guy we're talking about. And maybe not of the Chris Jones ilk, but certainly a guy that was going to put you in that 6-7 sacks from the interior. And he had a nerve issue in his leg. Wow. And it ended his career. And there was, maybe some medical situation involved and how it was handled. The whole thing was ugly. But Sharif was awesome. But yes, that's, again, and I think you probably even noted it into the draft. And this is high-end equity, and we only have so many first-round picks. When's the last time we put a true first-round pick before Dallas Turner into the defensive end spot, right? And then, we were just talking about offensive line earlier. Garrett Bradbury, 2019, Matt Khalil, 2012. The rest, Willie Beavers. So the commitment and the focus of this team has really been trying to build from the outside in. And so this is a team with a long history of elite wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, certainly the newest and the greatest of that bunch. But Jordan Addison has a say in that conversation, like 19 TDs in his first 2 years.
He's been phenomenal.
But in that process, this team is not necessarily winning games in the greatest of spotlights, maybe because the focus has been outside in versus inside out. So the trenches, let's change that up a little bit. Let's focus on the interior of both lines, and let's get this thing moving so we can, Have you seen the home schedule? How cool this is going to be?
Yeah, it's
you
a good
see
slate.
You want to see earth-moving lines. We're going to have the Eagles. We're going to have Jaden Daniels. I'm pretty sure we're going to have Burrow and the Bengals here. I think we have Lamar Jackson here. I think we got the Ravens here. This home schedule is going to be unfreaking believable. Let's go to work. If we're going to put J.J. McCarthy in this spot, let's get a freaking offensive line to protect him. Let's get that Caleb Johnson cat out of Iowa, so when we need 2 yards on 3rd and 2, we can actually just run it once in a while. That'd be fun. And let's win some games with the kid. Let's protect the kid, and let's run with the kid. I'm excited about it.
See, I got you back on the positive. And that's the thing I will say about Vikings fans. I mean, as bad as it has been,
yeah,
there is always that carrot that the hope. I mean, I guess there are probably some people listening to this are like, nah, man, I've never, there's no uplift. But like, I feel it from a lot of people, and the psychology of that is phenomenal. But I'm with you. I really, the trench conversation to me. I mean, I haven't been covering this league forever, but it becomes as obvious as possible that like offensive line and defensive line play, it's not always the sexiest, but like the teams that have it, and they have the Jeff Stoutlands of the world coaching it. They like the Lions offense having the offensive line that they. I mean, I think it just raises your floor no matter what you have elsewhere. No matter, I mean, the execution. It just gives you more room for error. So I'll say this as someone who covers it, as someone who's talked to people internally. And I'll have more conversation in the next few months. Like, I really expect them to hit it head on over the next few months. So it should be interesting.
I think they will. And you know what? Look at McVay. If we want to be like McVay, if we want to be Rams Midwest, what have they done? I mean, they found their Cooper Kupps in the mid rounds. They found their Puka Nakuas in the late rounds. I think he was a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
But running with Kyron Williams, using Kyron Williams and how he builds that team, Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. I mean, that the way that if Kevin O'Connell's still peeking over there to see what his mentor's doing, he wants to do that here, I think. And if he wants to, he's going to have to beef up the lines on both sides. So
yeah, I mean, look at the Rams last, and we'll get out of here on this, but I mean, Jared Verse, 1st round pick, Braden Fisk, 2nd round pick. Steve Avila, center, 2nd round pick. Byron Young.
Who's good, by the way. They were missing him earlier in the season. Yeah. Avila's damn good.
Yeah.
Dude.
Byron Young, who's obviously done what he's done, 3rd round pick. Kobe Turner, 3rd round pick. I mean, their best picks, their best 5 picks over the last 2 years, and then their best pick in 2022, all offensive line or defensive line, including the edge rushers. So it's. Yeah, I think
that's after not having draft picks for like 6 years. Remember Snead?
Yeah.
Bleep them picks. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then he got some, and then he hit home runs with them. That's
what you have to do.
We need to do that.
No question, Nordo. It's always fun. Appreciate you hopping on. Good conversation.
Yeah, no problem, man.
We will hit it probably right before free agency or around the draft. Should be fun. I'm with you on the Caleb Johnson kid from Iowa. I love running backs. I don't know why, but I love them.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do one of those the free agency bits. We're gonna have you on with me and Saucy if you're up for it.
Of course, it'll be a Saturday, and I'll 100%. Whenever, every time I see you guys, it'll be a Saturday. We'll do me, you, Sauce, and then the weather's phenomenal, and you'll go grill steaks and do something awesome, and I'll be in the North Loop doing something awesome. So, looking forward to it.
All right. Cheers, man.
And that'll do it for episode 52 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate you guys being here. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Nordo as much as I did. You could tell how much his passion for this team seeps through, and I apologize for running through the list of offensive linemen from the get-go. It's always fun to talk with Nordo and to be on KFAN. So we'll have him on in the future, but looking forward to some new guests next week. Some people I have not had before, some conversations that I think will take this thing in some different areas. So looking forward to that. Like I said at the top, the show, as always, is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the local area. Please go check them out if you have not. and you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. That helps us out. And stay locked into the show. More stories to come at The Athletic on a daily basis. So please go check that out and have a great weekend. Enjoy these championship games as much as I know I will. We will talk to you guys very, very soon.